Money Talks, I'm Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines, the Philippines likely to miss its growth targets for a third year in a row, says the Department of Economy, Planning and Development. We speak with Emmanuel Leco, President and Chief Economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines, Inc. The Interior Department says big personalities involved in anomalous flood control projects will be jailed soon as 8 DPWH officials undergo arraignment proceedings today. And in People Profit Planet, the search for Philippine companies creating more value than they extract in terms of emissions, resilience, and benefits for vulnerable communities. Professor Elmer Soriano, co-convener of Climate Labs, joins us live. The government promises to catch the big fish responsible for the flood control mess soon. DILG Secretary John Vic Remulla made the assurance as protesters on Sunday say only small players are getting arrested.
Papunta na tayo dun sa Pating at Balyena. Doon na tayo papunta. Okay. Malapit na yan. Bigyan natin ng ombudsman ng karapat-dapat na oras. Kasi may reasonable certainty for conviction. So hanggang hindi niya final yan, ibig sabihin, hindi siya sigurado.
Thank you.
But in his own time, lalabas yun.
This morning, 8 DPWH Region 4B officials are at the Sandigan Bayan for their scheduled arraignment. They are facing charges of malversation and graft over an anomalous floodwork in Oriental Mindoro. Organizers of the Trillion Peso March are open to holding a third rally if no corrupt officials are jailed soon. Caloocan Congressman Egay Erice told the big story last night. The protest may take place on February 25th, coinciding with the People Power anniversary. Meanwhile, Remulla also appealed for help from Filipinos overseas to provide information that can lead to the arrest of fugitive and ex-Congressman Zaldico, who may be staying in Portugal. As for 2 executives of SunWest, the firm founded by Ko, the PNP said they already sent surrender feelers. In other news, the Commission on Audit has flagged over 14 million pesos in foreign travel advances made by the Office of the President, still uncollected as of December last year. In its annual audit report, COA said the unpaid amounts came from several agencies and local government units that joined presidential trips since 2022. The expenses were incurred during state visits to multiple countries, including China and the U.S. COA noted some accounts have been outstanding for over 2 years, far beyond the 30-day settlement rule. The state auditors also flagged the Office of the Vice President for delayed liquidation of grants under its Magnegosyo Taday or MTD livelihood program. The Commission reported that 31 individuals and 11 NGOs and CSOs received over 2 million pesos in total assistance, but failed to liquidate on time. With corruption and calamities weighing on activity, the Department of Economy, Planning and Development says the Philippines will likely miss even the low end of its growth target this year. Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan admitted the 5.5% to 6.5% goal this year is out of reach. The economy would need to grow about 7% in the fourth quarter to catch up, something he said is highly unlikely. This would mark the 3rd straight year the country will miss its GDP growth target. Balisacan hopes the worst is over after the weak 3rd quarter, though he expects cautious spending from infrastructure-related agencies to still weigh on the full-year numbers. Even so, he noted the 9-month average of 5% keeps the Philippines middle of the pack in the region, with the goal of climbing back to the top tier next year. Barely a week since COP30 ended, Colombia and the Netherlands have picked up on the momentum they started, where more than 80 countries expressed support for a fossil fuel phase-out roadmap. While the Philippines is not part of the 24 countries taking part, any fossil fuel phase-out will benefit a country known to the world's most vulnerable and disaster-prone. With us now for more is Professor Elmer Soriano, the co-convener of Climate Labs, a network connecting governments and universities to act locally to regenerate the planet. He is currently hosting a net positive case writing. Good seeing you, Prof. Elmer. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Cathy, for having me.
So, what do you make of the Colombia talks outside of COP30? And in what way can the Philippines benefit, even if it's not a member?
Well, I think it's a bold move by the countries. Our culture is heavily dependent on petroleum, and it is a bold statement to say that we will stop our dependency on petroleum. But that's what humanity should be doing, and the Philippines would benefit from that because there'd be less global warming, and we'd have less calamities and heat over time if that helps reduce global warming.
So, let's bring fossil fuel future closer to net positive, as that's our discussion today. How far or how close are we, given that we're still waiting for the updated version of our NDCs, or nationally determined contributions?
Well, net positive, I think, is equally bold. In ways, it's even more complex and more ambitious than just phasing out petroleum. So, net positive is based on the book by Paulman and Winston, and they described how firms can actually try to reverse global warming through their operations by expanding the scope of net positive operations, initially from within their firm and then to their value chains and industries. But that's not easy, but that's how firms can contribute to this net positive future.
They can, but it's not easy. I mean, many corporations here are familiar with acronyms like CSR and ESG. So how is genuinely net positive different from, say, doing less harm or going into traditional CSR projects?
Well, CSR evolved from community relations. It's companies trying to do good, trying to improve relationships with the communities, trying to give back somehow to the community. But net positive, going net positive is looking at their own operations, their own DNA, and trying to express their mandate by actually producing more good from their core operations. So it's it goes deeper than CSR.
Have you got a sample, maybe of a company that is well on its way to being net positive?
Well, the book Net Positive was written by former CEO of Unilever, and they describe in detail the different measures that they did to clean up more and more parts of their business units, how they revised their branding so that they could address inequities and poverty. In the Philippines, just yesterday we had a workshop. The Climate Action Labs had a workshop at Mapua to talk about city cooling, and I learned from their officer that they are one of their senior officers that they are completely zero carbon, at least in terms of electricity. So through a power purchase agreement, they ensure that all of the electric power that they consume on their campus is produced from renewable energy. So I'm thinking, hey, that's a bold move and that's something local.
So is this something that renewable companies can take on more easily than those that probably will have to work around their whole ecosystem to find a way to be net positive?
Well, yes. Renewable energy companies have at their core production of clean energy. And then if you're, say, a renewable energy, solar power plant or a wind power farm, then most of your operational expenses go to construction. And then after that, you're just harvesting clean energy. So yes, it's easier for renewable energy companies to pull off. But still, they still have a carbon footprint even with their operations. Their vehicles might not be electric vehicles. There's a carbon footprint when they construct using concrete. So it's not necessarily net positive immediately.
So how do you respond then to business leaders who say our margins are thin, the policy environment is uncertain, and net positive is a luxury that we cannot afford right now?
Well, on the one hand, that's understandable. They have to make a margin to thrive, to survive as a business. And yet, if the CEOs, the board members, and the top leaders of the companies need to begin recognizing that their operations produce greenhouse gases, and that is getting thrown up to the air, and that is making the planet warmer for our children. And right now, they're not absorbing the cost of that, uh, of the negative effect of the greenhouse gases.
And the cost could also mean flooding. If you were to sign a net positive scorecard for a Philippine city or province, what 2 or 3 indicators would you insist on tracking and why? I mean, any city in particular that comes to mind or province here in the Philippines?
Good question. So the net positive framework by Paulman focuses on firms, and I think if initially firms within the four walls of a firms that produces products or services, if we use that framework on cities, then they would try to go net positive within City Hall, right? Transition to electric vehicles, transition to clean energy for their air conditioning. But the city governments are also in charge of overseeing the city, the population. So more progressive city would strive, sooner or later, all cities will should strive to become net positive cities, and not just City Hall, but all of the residents and firms within that city.
And I see that you're working with universities and social innovation councils. I've seen some of the pictures. Looks like a regular classroom, but how can universities and professional schools change how they train the future leaders so that net positive becomes a default and not the exception?
Thanks. That's a good question. I think this work is intergenerational, and that's why, well, most of the instructors and faculty members have not yet learned net positive, and therefore they feel ill-equipped to teach it to their students. And that's why we should start soon and start with the students so that they start learning these mindsets. In this photo, it's actually a social lab, and we have senior high school students in Sultan Kudarat reporting their findings to the municipal mayor. So the guy there in the background is the municipal mayor, and they're reporting their research findings. And to my mind, this is how we can start closing the loop. Students, young adults, learning that their research, their ideas matter to city government, and local governments learning to listen to the youth, because the youth have more at stake in terms of the success or failure of this of reversing or slowing down climate global warming.
All right, lots more to work on to get to net positive, but thank you so much for your insights and also keeping
Thanks
us
for
up to
having me.
speed on it. Prof. Elmer Soriano of Climate Labs. And you're watching Money Talks coming right up. The Philippines will again miss the economic growth target. We'll speak to Emmanuel Noel Leco, the president and chief economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines, Inc. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. A deepening crypto sell-off halts U.S. markets' winning run. The Dow fell by 0.9%. S&P 500 tumbled by 0.5%, and the Nasdaq slid by 1/3%. Bitcoin fell by 6.4%, its largest daily decrease since March. The crypto market has been on shaky ground for weeks due to the tariff threats. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields ticked up to 4.095%, and gold prices jumped to $4,239 per ounce. U.S. futures are moving marginally in after-hours trading. As you can see there, Nasdaq is up by 0.1%, S&P 500 by less than 0.1%, and the Dow trading flat. Asian markets are up in the first hour of trading this Tuesday, despite the crypto sell-off on Wall Street. South Korea's Kospi is up by 1.5%, Japan's Nikkei 225 climbs by 0.5%, and Australia's ASX 200 advances by 0.1%. Let's take a quick check on our own markets. PSEI opening this Tuesday higher by over 0.25%, back above 6,000. In fact, 6,006. Investors traded cautiously yesterday, Monday, while awaiting for fresh catalysts, leaving the bourse down by 0.5%. The broader all-shares index fell by nearly 0.7%, with local counters mostly in the red. As for the Philippine peso, it opens today flat, 58.49 to the dollar. Peso climbed to a one-month high as the dollar was dragged by impending leadership change at the Fed. And the 10-year government bond yields ticked up to 5.945% from the previous close of 5.936%. In corporate news, Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation is set to list its 15 billion peso fixed-rate bonds on the Philippine Dealing and Exchange Corp. This comes after strong investor demand that pushed the offer to a 5 billion peso oversubscription. The offering covers bonds with 3, 5, and 10-year tenors, hold a PRS AAA stable rating from Phil Ratings. MPTC earlier secured the SEC's pre-effective approval with a public offer running from November 17 to 21. The company said proceeds will fund ongoing works for Cavitex, Calax, and LLEX, as well as refinance bridge facilities and support general corporate needs. The deal is led by BPI Capital and First Metro as joint issue managers, with BDO Capital, China Bank Capital, PNB Capital, and Security Bank Capital serving as joint lead underwriters and book runners. MPTC and Signal, the owner of this channel, are both part of the MVP Group. Our guest today is forecasting November inflation to come in at 1.8%, higher than our Business World median estimate of 1.6%. He's also expecting fourth quarter GDP to come in at 4.25%, higher than third quarter's 4%. Well, with us now for more is Emmanuel Noel Leco, President and Chief Economist at Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines, Inc. Seeing you again, Noel. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Okay, so when you've got the DepDev Secretary saying that we won't even meet the lower end of our growth forecast for the full year, what does that mean then for the fourth quarter? And how deep a cut will it be for the forecast range for the full year?
I think it was bold enough for the Secretary to admit that we are not going to make the forecast for this year, considering that it was already downgraded. We've been targeting 7%, especially after the pandemic. We adjusted that lower, and still we couldn't make it. So for the Secretary to say that even that we will not make, that is quite disturbing. So we said that the last quarter, probably, after hitting bottom 4%, we'll probably pick up a little bit. Due to stronger consumer spending. Remember, last quarter, even the consumers held back on their spending. They spent less on housing, they spent less on clothing, they spent less on food, and I think many of our retailers would have seen that. And that they would have calculated.
And to what would you attribute that loss of confidence? Is it because of the lack of consumer trust? And how does that relate to the backdrop in which we're heading into the Christmas season, where there's typically a lot more spending, but as you're saying that there might be some holding back?
The loss of confidence in the political leadership in the country is a major factor. If we are looking at investing in a company, we look at management. And if we see management as not up to the job, people will be holding back. You will not invest in a company that you are not exactly confident about the leadership in that company. So in the Philippines, it's not just the investors, it's even the consumers. So the consumers are holding back. They want to put aside something that they can use when the situation gets worse. So people are anticipating wars to come before it gets better.
Worse to come. So what sort of figures then are we looking at for 2026 to 2028? Because the DBCC is going to review their forecast, not only for this year, but for the next 2-3 years.
Well, definitely it's not going to hit 5.5%. It's probably 5 and 5.25, which is low. And I think unless something is done to patch the holes in our fiscal management, nothing is going to be, nothing can be expected to happen in a positive way.
Well, Sec RC said we're still middle of the pack if we stay at 5%.
Well, I don't want to compare the Philippines with our neighbors.
But
because
we used to be compared all the time. We're like the second fastest, one of the fastest in the region. I mean, has that all been lost, do you think?
Yes, considering that we hit bottom, the lowest in the region, of course, we can only expect the Philippines to get higher. So if the baseline was low, I think you can expect that the Philippines, when it gets a little better, it would do a little, so much better in terms of numbers. But when it comes to where we came from, especially during the pandemic, actually we were hoping that the minimum of 7% was less optimistic. And realistically, we were hoping that we will hit 10% double digit because we lost so much during the pandemic. But now that is all gone. So I think right now we're looking at the Philippines at a totally different level now. We have to be realistic. Is the Philippines up to it? There's widespread lack of confidence politically, economically. So I'm hoping that the new year will be met with dramatic, decisive action from the government.
What does that mean for an investor wanting in, or at least is invested in the Philippines? What sort of dramatic action?
Well, when they say corruption is a major impediment to our development, there must be a decisive action to address corruption. What does that mean? Those who have been identified as the ones stealing money from the government coffers should be put in jail. And that is not supposed to mean that we just put anybody in jail. No, we really need to have honest to goodness investigation and let the people know what's happening and come up with hard evidence, airtight case against these people and make sure that the money that was stolen from our coffers can be brought back. Definitely there has to be restitution, there has to be recovery, and definitely there has to be prosecution.
You spoke of fiscal holes that needed to be fixed. What exactly?
Well, right now we're talking about the budget. I think the last time I guested here, we were talking about a lot of optimism about this new budget, considering that opinion about the previous year's budget was it was the most corrupt. It was the most off-tangent budget. So we were hoping that we have learned. Unfortunately, right now, we're still looking at more than 600 billion pesos in unprogrammed funding. And that means that the budget is still very vulnerable to the same corruption practices that we saw during this budget.
Could we be facing a reenacted budget then for 2026?
Oh, that would be terrible if we...
Is it possible?
Yes, it is, because right now the Senate, Congress has not come to any closer to passing a budget. They're now working double time, and having a fire at the Senate doesn't help. So people are now asking, what else did they lose from that fire? And how can they now catch up with the budget schedule? Right now, I hope that people in the Senate, in Congress, are able to catch up, double time, and make sure that the holes in our budget are eliminated.
We got about a minute, Noel. The only lever, it seems, is monetary policy. If you're not thinking that inflation might go higher than forecast, how many cuts will it take to right up the economy from the Bangko Sentral?
Well, Bangko Sentral is kind of put in a corner. If Bangko Sentral does not reduce interest rates, people will be asking, inflation is so much in control, 1.7, 1.8, less than 2%. That is great. And therefore, what are you waiting for in terms of reducing interest rate in the country? However,
You want them to cut intermeeting before the December 10 meeting?
Well, I would like them to cut interest rate. However, the other challenge is that the peso is not doing good, and cutting interest rates is not going to help the Philippine peso. So this is it's like walking a tightrope for the Bangko Sentral. You want to defend the value of the peso, but at the same time, you have to send a message to the Philippine economy that inflation is under control, and therefore we can ease up on our interest rate.
I meant December 11th. So it's a 25 bips of a rate cut on December 11th and a follow-through perhaps in the coming months. Is that right?
Yes.
But you
yes.
did make a mention of the concern on the peso. We've hit 59.17 to the dollar, the lowest in history. Could there be a risk that we hit 60?
Oh, yes, definitely. Hitting 59 already, if we reduce interest rate, 59 could be even worse compared to the dollar. The dollar is, believe it or not, doing much better compared to expectations.
Just a final point. As you mentioned, peso 60, it's probable and possible. What happens then to inflation? Will that be the key problem for 2026?
2026, I think it will be pushing inflation too far. We were able to manage inflation now, but given the weaknesses that we are seeing in our economy, the import, export, our trade performance is not doing so well. I think the inflation will be at risk. We might hit over 2% next year, which is still not bad. However, if we say 2% and below, that is very good for the Philippine economy. But if we breach 2%, that will be considered as a weakness again of our economy.
Well, thank you for your insights. Appreciate
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Hopefully there will be better silver linings in the
I
next.
hope so. I hope so.
Noel Leica of Crisp. And before we go, here's something for anybody who's ever dreamt of becoming a journalist. The University of Santo Tomas has released On Air Na, Pinoy News Anchors Live, the country's first comprehensive guidebook on news anchoring. Written by veteran broadcast journalist Jose Maria Carlos, the book traces how news anchoring evolved in Philippine media, tackling the ethical and editorial pressures of the job, and outlines what it takes to build credibility on air. It draws insights from 31 previous and current anchors and underscores that broadcasting is far more than an 8-to-5 career. And that is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Kapatid, we are one news, all sides, all the time. Have a great day ahead.